U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has been out pushing Joe Biden's agenda to raise taxes on the millionaires and the billionaires, just as so many Western countries are doing. Today, I'm going to break down and react to her thoughts and tell you why competition is dead in the Western world. All right, so I'm going to play you a clip from Janet Yellen. This was put together by a group called Americans for Tax Fairness. And they give a big two-hand high five to hashtag tax the rich. I guess this is one of those groups where they figure the average person paying $1,000 in tax means that if Elon Musk pays $10 billion, he's a disgusting pig. So let's go through this. By the way, if it's your first time here, I'm Andrew Henderson, the founder of Nomad Capitalist, who helps the evil rich, the 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors, legally reduce their taxes by going overseas, by seeking competition, by diversifying and protecting their assets, and by getting things like second passports so that these people are fully in control and your country taxes you no matter where you go anywhere on earth and follows your every move. You have an exit plan. You can learn more at nomadcapitalist.com, or you can join us at Nomad Capitalist Live, the biggest and best offshore event where we will help you get up to speed. So here is the clip from Janet Yellen.
We learned over the last year, based on IRS tax data, that some of the wealthiest Americans pay no federal income taxes each year. The average tax rate paid by the top 25 billionaires is a little over 3%. That's far below the 13% paid by the average American family. The administration and the president have proposed an innovative minimum tax on American households worth more than $100 million. And how would it get the top 100th of 1% of Americans to pay their fair share in taxes?
Well, under current laws, you said some of the wealthiest Americans pay very little in tax. They receive income as capital gains, but those capital gains aren't taxed until they're realized, and they can escape taxation entirely at the end. So the proposed minimum income tax would impose a minimum tax of 20% on total income, and that would be inclusive of those unrealized capital gains, and would apply to all taxpayers with wealth greater than $100 million. I think this is a well-crafted proposal, and I think it would get at something that really allows the highest income earners in the United States to pay, as you said, less than most workers do.
So there was a report that came out not so long ago that basically leaked from the IRS, like how much people are paying. And there were some people, I will tell you this, we work, as I said, exclusively with 7, 8, 9, occasionally 10-figure entrepreneurs and investors. And I think in over 1,000 plus clients as a boutique firm, I can remember 2 people who had inherited their money. So that may be a confirmation bias of the fact that people who inherited money don't really care about saving taxes, or it may be also an indication of the fact that the people that we work with, largely in Western countries, by and large, are earning their money, and that's why they are wealthy. And so I think that a lot of this, why is this being pumped out on social media, is your fellow citizens are angry. And what I've been saying for 20 years is the anger is just going to be misdirected. They just want some solution. They want to vent. The average person doesn't really understand what's going on. But they understand that inflation is going up. They understand that things are harder to buy. They understand that life is getting harder. And I've said, from the Nomad Capitalist perspective, that a lot of jobs, a lot of companies are saying, well, we don't have to hire in the United States. Why do we have to hire here? What is it? We don't owe you anything. There's a competitive landscape over here. Workers are more productive over here. Costs are low over here. Regulations are lower. Whatever the case may be, everyone goes where they're treated best. Same whether you're an American for tax fairness, and you're one of the 67% of Americans in 2020 that paid 0 in federal income tax. You're not overpaying for anything. You're not going to the shop where things cost double just because you want to pay double. We're all going where we're treated best. And so Janet Yellen did such a great job in her previous job that now, what is $100 million, first of all? How do you assess a family that has $100 million in wealth? Businesses have been valued at such high levels. When I talk to entrepreneurs and they're getting valuations for their businesses, they're getting some of the highest valuations ever because money has been so cheap. And so therefore, you can have a business that is a successful business, no doubt. Maybe you're making $10 million a year, but you've got a business worth $100 million, even though you don't really have much in the way of liquid assets in many cases. Are you part of this evil rich that's not paying taxes? Well, wait a second. you're making 10 million bucks in a country like the US or some other Western country, you're paying a boatload in taxes. You're not using unrealized capital gains, but you could easily fall into this $100 million category, right? Look at other assets. Then they talk about how the billionaires, their asset values have been going up. Yes, because of people like Janet Yellen's policies, where people have been putting money into things that have dramatically gone up in value. Art, or any other kind of collectibles, things like that. And so does that go into the $100 million? I mean, from what I've seen in all the proposals, and there's so many different proposals in the U.S. about like, we got to raise taxes on these rich jerks, it's always, everything gets thrown in the pot. You have an old car, you have some art, you have cash in the bank, you have stocks, it all gets thrown in there. And so what Janet Yellen's saying here is, we've talked about this before, basically if you have enough money that she thinks you're really rich, she can now throw you in the pot with everybody that is part of this billionaire class that society believes is corrupt. Now, whether that's right or not, a guy like Elon Musk just paid $10 billion in taxes. Bill Gates once said, like, hey, listen, I made all this money. This is many years ago. He said, I paid $10 billion in taxes in my lifetime. Now I think it's much higher. And like at a certain point, like, what is enough? Okay, I don't think Bill Gates is a guy who's protesting taxes, but you do make it like, how much was contributed to the American economy by Bill Gates' company? Again, whatever your thoughts on Bill Gates, over the years, that on top of everything he contributed, he also paid $10 billion, and now it's much more. How many extra roads is this guy driving on? Right? How many extra schools are his children going to that these people always trot out? The kind of things that you would see Americans for Tax Fairness would be trotting out. And I really do love the background music. It really makes it dramatic. But you could be, if you run a relatively successful business and you've saved some money or you've bought some assets, you could be in this $100 million class. What happens when the policies of Janet Yellen continue to drive the value of your dollar down? Are they going to change the $100 million number? I doubt it. Look at what happened with the alternative minimum tax for so long, by the way, where it just became more and more people getting hit with that because they never indexed it to inflation. And so she wants you to pay because you have some value. Well, look at what's happened to financial markets recently. Do you get your money back? What's Janet Yellen's policy that when your Bitcoin goes from 67,000 to 18,000, like, do you get all that unrealized capital gains tax back? Because I can tell you this, we have worked with a number of folks who they put in $500,000 into some crypto, maybe it was Bitcoin way back when, or it was something more exotic more recently. They put in $500,000, and some people have had like $50 to $100 million. There were people who had astronomical, like thousands of % gains. And so there they are. Now they're one of the evil millionaires and billionaires that this group and Janet Yellen and whoever this congressperson is want you to think are the ones corrupting society. It's just a guy living in Kansas City who bought some Ethereum back in like 2014, and now he's really rich. He ain't corrupting anybody. He doesn't have his hands on the lever of power. He's not, pulling the puppet strings of people in Congress. We're not talking about that. The people that we talk to here at Nomad Capitalist are just everyday people who become extremely successful and who, if they followed my advice and went overseas and stopped subjecting themselves to Janet Yellen's crap, would be even more successful. They would stop paying the already ridiculous rates of tax they're paying in the United States. She wants to come after you merely because it's politically advantageous to her boss, Joe Biden, to say, you have money. We'll just define it very vaguely, because that sounds good. Sounds politically not, hey, what's $100 million? As if, again, the average person knows 10 million from 100 million from a billion. They just know they're upset that their life has become harder. And I don't take any pleasure in that. But it shouldn't be the people who are propping the place up, the people who are paying. When you strip out a handful of people who are doing what they're talking about and aren't paying anything, eventually may pay a lot. The average person who's an ultra high net worth individual is paying plenty of taxes. Look at the percentages. It's close to 50% in the United States, for example. And so none of that matters. They're just going to throw some vague numbers out there. They want to tax your unrealized gains. They want to make you pay 20%. 20% on stuff you haven't even sold yet. It's not going to help the financial markets. It's going to drive things down further. It's going to not solve any of the problems going on right now. But people really believe that if you just take everyone's money that hasn't even been made yet and reinvest it and have Janet Yellen, who I promise you couldn't run a hot dog cart. She couldn't run anything. She'll take your money and squander it so badly. I mean, I've seen, you come and watch the ship that we run around here. We try and run a tight ship like any business. We're not wasting money on stuff. And I've been very careful in our business to not hire extremely corporate people who are used to the $1,000, taxi ride that you see in some other companies. The $1,000 taxi ride in Janet Yellen's world means absolutely nothing. That's like, it's the $5,000 taxi ride. So your money's going to have her basically squander it in some political, pretense that you have too much money. It's utterly laughable. But the problem is that people in your country, they like this idea. By and large, there's one study in Canada, something like 75% of people are like, yeah, 100 million. And so they always have some number, which just seems like a lot, right? And it is a lot, no doubt, $100 million, a lot of money. But who's valuing it? How do they value it? Especially in an inflationary environment, especially for entrepreneurs and people who are investing in high-risk assets. And then what happens when everything falls apart? Those are the questions that they don't ask. And so what I did, and not even for these reasons, but I just saw that the trend in the United States was getting worse. My life as someone who wanted to live overseas, tax benefits or no, was going to be more difficult, more laborious, just more of a hassle. I said, I'm going to go where I'm treated best. I'm out. I talk about Janet Yellen not because I'm really worried about what Janet Yellen's doing for my personal life, but if you're living in the U.S., you should be worried. If you're living in Canada, your version of Janet Yellen, if you're living in Europe, your version of Janet Yellen, they're all saying the same thing, and your life's about to get a lot harder. You want to have your plan B ready. Where can you move? I know that Janet Yellen doesn't want you to have competition. She still lives in the 50s when there were like 3 countries that anyone would go to. Now we live in a place where there are many countries where you can go to, and they compete for you, and they roll out the red carpet, and they send you letters thanking you for employing people, and they give you tax incentives, and they give you a better deal, and the weather's better, whatever the case may be. Why do you need to sit around and listen to this and be subject to being such a hated person in your own country? Go where you're treated best.